Hey, what's happening, folks? How you doing? It is Friday, July 23rd, 2021. Holy smokes, it's hotter than sin outside. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope your week was fantastic. I'm the Hexican. I'm hanging out here, Ritual Madness podcast style on Fridays. I'm glad that you were able to join me. If you're joining us super early, it's right on time, I guess. But, I feel like I've done so much this week, man. You know what I mean? It's just crazy. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're having fun. I hope you're ready to listen to a fantastic podcast. I think it's pretty okay. Do me a favor, check out Anti-Broadcasting, custom screen printing. If you're looking to get some screen printing done, these guys are fantastic. Fast turnarounds. They use fantastic materials. Anti-Broadcasting at gmail.com. That's 612-836-9488. That's 612-836-9488. Again, email antibroadcasting at gmail.com. I'm actually wearing a shirt that they did for Endless Rain. These guys were looking to get this print done, and they didn't have a guy to do it at the time frame that they needed it to be done. So they gave me put a shout out on Facebook asking if anybody had some good screen printing folks, and I shot them some anti-broadcasting, and they came through for them right before a show. And man, thank God that we've got shows going on again here in 2021. This COVID shit is insane. Today I just heard some craziness. I have a friend that is in the music scene. She just moved back from Texas and got her vaccinations. I want to say like 2 months ago. She got both of her shots done, and she got sick and it has COVID right now. It got the new strain of it. So she is vaccinated and is still fucking sick from it. I can't believe it. So it's crazy how this is all changing and switching up. I think the media and all the scare tactics are starting to lose their grip, so they're trying to get you as much as they possibly can. I hope this shit doesn't pop off again, and we're back into the no concerts and and you got to wear masks everywhere again. Oh, this heat with masks is gonna suck shit, and I know there's still people that have to wear them all the time. And I worked through this whole thing, and it was a nightmare. And with these hot temperatures, man, and working outside with a mask on, it is no kind of fun, and y'all know that. If you're looking to get some tattoo work, Lowbrow Saints Tattoo Collective is a spot that I like to go. Jason has been on the podcast. Good dude. Go down there. He's got some fantastic artists down there. Lowbrow Saints Tattoo Collective, 612-353-4755. That's 612-353-4755. Lowbrowsaints at gmail.com. Send them your design. Ask them what they can help you out with something. If you've got a design and you want to add something to it, make it your own, send it to them. Give them a shout. Again, that's 612-353-4755. Lowbrow Saints at Gmail. Good friends of mine. This week, wait, you know what? Hey, in the next coming weeks, I'm sponsoring this show. Bad Promoter Productions presents Friday, August 6th. 7 p.m. doors, 8 p.m. show, 21 plus, $5 at the door. That is at Club Underground, 355 Monroe Street, Minneapolis. I wanted to say St. Paul for some odd reason. Usilic, Cymothwa's CD release party, and Semtex. And I know Semtex is working on some new material right now. But this is going to be a fantastic show. So please come on down there. I'm going to be down there hanging out, talking shit, and the good shit. It is on a Friday, so I won't be podcasting. I'm just going to come hang out, and you should come hang out with me. It's going to be good. Again, it is August 6th, Friday, down at Club Underground. Starts at 7 p.m. Come down again. That's Usilic, Cymothwa, and Semtex. And this week's guest, Todd Gaglione, right? That's what it is. I want to make sure that I have that proper. You're still muted, buddy. There we go. All right, you there? There we go. We got you.
So yeah, talking about the COVID thing, I wanted to warn. I work in a very crowded building. About a month ago, I'm going to say 400 or 500 people. I'm a cosmetology instructor, so there's tons of people. We're all close together. We're taking guests and all that. Masks all came off a month ago. A week later, I got sick, and I'm better now. But for 2 weeks, I hardly had a voice, and for a few days, I didn't have one at all. And if I talk a lot, my voice will crack and get higher, and you might have trouble understanding. I just got to clear my throat, and that I don't know if it was COVID. I never got tested. but I've never been sick for 3 weeks before. But I also accredited, we were all wearing masks for over a year.
Yeah.
You know, lost all our immunities. It's probably just a virus or whatever. But so.
Yeah.
My voice comes and goes. I usually have a really low voice, but it's kind of, I got like a mid voice now.
Got the mids going on. Well, hey man, thank you for joining the show, man, and coming in, or joining us. What's that? I'm sorry.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, dude, I gotta be honest, man. I've seen you around since, goddamn, dude. I want to say it was like since I was about 16 or 17, man. You know, like our bands would be like two ships passing in the night, man. You know, I think there's been a few shows that you and I have been on with my old band Necromus, and I know that that Misery and Necromus had played some shows together in the entry on the main stage. I mean, we played quite a few together.
Probably. There was a lot of partying back then, so my Misery is probably like at our hiatus. Not hiatus. Our biggest point probably like in the 90s. And then after like 2000, we started slowing down a bit more, just playing more local shows every once in a while. But 90s is kind of a blur for me. So a lot of times I don't remember a lot of the shows. And like I said, the whole scene there was a party scene. Luckily, cancel culture now, luckily that wasn't going on back then because everybody would have got canceled back then. Not so much for doing anything wrong, just for being so crazy, I guess.
Yeah.
But so if we did play, I probably don't remember. a lot of times I was down drinking or doing something else.
Yeah,
bands were playing, but that was then. I don't mind talking about it now because it's been a while ago.
Yeah,
it's always a good person to talk to because I can talk kind of honestly about all that, and hopefully it helps people too.
Yeah, for sure, man. So
that party.
So I always like to start with like some history, man. Like when you were young and your folks, your mom and dad, your brothers and sisters. What type of music was around when you were a kid? What was on the radio? What was in your house just flowing around in the air?
I had no brothers or sisters. My stepdad exited at about age 9. I just met my biological dad for the first time like 5 years ago. My mom was a hippie. We'll put it that way. I always had like flowered pants and I had long hair like the whole time I was in grade school and that. I remember a lot of Barbra Streisand, Chicago, Boston, stuff like that. That's what she was listening to. And I think the first, obviously, this is an old story, the first album that I got that she bought me was a Kiss album. So it kind of started with me with that. I was more into the look. I didn't think the music was the greatest, but when you're a kid, that was the shit back then.
What album was it?
I don't remember, but the name of it. But it was the picture where they're in the circle and they have the 4 faces.
Oh yeah, Rock and Roll All Over.
Yeah.
Or wait,
so that was my. Then I kind of, obviously, growing up, it was MTV time, so I was mostly listening to bands I would hear on MTV. It was really hard to hear new music back then. There was no internet.
Right.
I used to get picked on a lot in high school because I'd wear Devo and Adam and the Ants T-shirts. And then senior year, it was more Motley Crue. And I was the little kid, jet black hair, brown eyes, La Crosse, Wisconsin. One of two, it was a big high school, one of 2 guys with their ears pierced I used to get picked on a lot wearing those T-shirts and that. But that's kind of where I got started, I guess, early on, more of a new waver, I guess is what it would be called now.
Sure.
That was my start with music, but it was mostly the hippie stuff with my mom.
You know that just that story right there really explains your persona. When I remember seeing you with Misery and like being around town and whatnot, you always had a very like real stern face, man. Like you weren't showing a lot of emotion. You weren't giving anybody any reason to fuck with you at all. When I was coming up as a teenager, I would see you and I'd be like, that dude, you don't want to fuck with that dude. You know what I mean? Like you just had a real solemn face and you didn't seem like you were a very playful dude.
I think I was thinking about this too. I think the reason it started is I used to get picked on so much. And when I was in high school, I was like 5'8", 5'9". I probably shrank a half inch since then, and 140 pounds. actually went in. The reason I remember my weight is I went in right after high school. I went to was associate's degree in police science. I was actually going to become a police officer. And I think that had something to do with being picked on all the time too. And when I was in school for that, I was 5'8.5" and 150 pounds. And back then, 150 pounds was the minimum they'd take, and 5'8" was the shortest they'd take for a cop. So I was right on that borderline. And then I think I started getting into working out more just because of getting picked on all the time. And I've always had the resting bitch face. A better way of putting it. People always think when I think I furrow my eyebrows and that, so people always think I'm mad, but it's just my regular face. Be perfectly happy, but look like I'm pissed off.
Yeah. My mom used to give me so much shit because, as I started to get, out of high school and shit like that, I was always like, just had that face, I was walking down Grand Avenue during Grand Old Days, and my mom popped out of the crowd and like walked up to me, and she was all mad. She was like, "Why do you walk around with that look on your face all the time?" I'm like, "Yeah," and she goes, "Why? Are you looking for a fight?" And I'm like, "No, I'm trying to avoid one. Like, people don't want to fuck with you if you don't have a smile on you. You know what I mean? Like, people like to fuck with people, man. You know what I mean? And being kind of a bigger dude, because I was always like 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", right in there, and like being a kind of a bigger dude, people want to pick on you. They want to fuck with you. They want to push your buttons and shit. So I totally get it, man.
Most people will tell you too. I'm probably the most passive, friendliest person you'll meet, even though I just don't give off that aura, I guess.
Yeah. I actually talked to Mike Lund, and we spoke about Mike Lund a little bit off the air before we got on, and Mike actually said that he was doing some stuff with you, and I was like, man, I told him, I was like, man, he just seemed like he was a mean dude, and he was like, no, man, he's absolutely the opposite of that, and there's somebody else too that we both know that said the same thing, like, oh no, man, he's way cool, man, way laid back, way chill.
You know who that was?
I don't remember.
Yeah. No, I'm not one to pick fights. If somebody picks something with me, I just try to get out of it. Usually do. Right. Probably been in 2 fights my whole life.
Yeah.
Not started just trying to get out of it usually.
Yeah.
Don't have a choice but to fight, I guess, at some point.
Yeah. Right. So like now with the new wave type of stuff, like where did you start going? I guess new wave is like kind of right before you would really kind of jump into some of the punk stuff. I mean, Devo's very close to that stuff. The early punk stuff. What was the bands that were kind of pushing you towards that direction to go into more of a heavier style?
So I'm going to accredit it to a friend I had. Right when I graduated, and I moved out immediately, right the day after I turned 18. I moved in with a friend that I had met. I didn't know him that long. He had just moved from Japan. He was stationed in the army, and he was like a hardened punk rock dude. And so, of course, came with him that music, and he had a big music collection. So I started out with going from Adam and the Ants, Devo, even early Duran Duran, The Cure, that kind of stuff. Total new wave stuff. He was listening to The Exploited, Discharge, GBH, and stuff like that. So that I think that gave me the push. That's when I was introduced. Because remember back then, wasn't really on the radios, and that kind of stuff really wasn't on MTV. And MTV was like the main thing, or fanzines.
Sure.
Back in because of no internet. So at least I got introduced to the best of it, I guess. I think Sex Pistols was one of his favorite bands too. So I've kind of liked them, but I always seem to gravitate towards the more metal end of it.
Right.
And at that time, I think my favorite band still to this day is Motley Crue. I still credit that. And that has a lot to do with that time of your life growing up and having that music, because we both know they put out a lot of shitty albums and shitty songs.
Right.
I'm still going to say Motley Crue.
Yeah.
But, so that's kind of how I got started with the more metal side of punk rock. And then for some reason got into a punk band, and I've been part of the punk movement now for 30 years, something like that. Don't really call myself a punk rocker, but I've definitely been involved with it. And I've always kind of joked that I think I'm the most punk rock of the punk rockers, because I'm the one that was kind of stuck to being individual when there seems to be a lot of rules with punk rock.
Right.
And I was kind of hung out with different scenes and that too. And I was kind of on the edge of a lot of things, but you'd go to a punk show and I looked the least like all the punk rockers there, but yet I still definitely had a look to me.
Sure. Now, so you're a bass player. Like, how did you get started playing? Was bass your original instrument, or did you just kind of slowly move to bass?
When I was a teenager, a friend of mine, thought we were going to start a Motley Crue cover band, and I actually started taking some guitar lessons. And he left his bass. We never got started. This was in La Crosse. He left his bass over at my place, so I would mess around with it, and I guess I just decided that I liked playing the bass better than I liked playing guitar. And I was probably maybe 6 lessons deep, but it was enough to kind of get a backbone for the music.
Yeah.
So that's how I got started. So when I graduated from the police science, it was called associate's degree police science. Back then you actually had to have 2 years of training before you were a cadet. Now I think they give you, how many hours of training, and they're ready to give you a gun and you're out there. But I didn't want to be a cop in Wisconsin, so I moved to Minneapolis. And I brought I remember it was a PV head, a PV speaker, and a Kramer bass. I didn't move up with a whole lot, hardly any furniture in that. And I moved with 2 females that wanted to move here. We got a big moving truck. We moved into a house together, and it was in a really bad neighborhood. It's like by the Chicago Lake Liquor Store back then. And I moved to 10th and Harmon downtown. And there was a building that was known, it was full of punk rockers at that time. And I had the equipment with me. And that's kind of how I was actually friends with the singer, the original singer who went on to Nausea. And John and Gary were from Portland, and Sid. And we all kind of met in the building, and that's how kind of Misery formed. It was just a bunch of friends.
Sure.
That lived in the same building.
Wow.
So that's how I got started with the bass.
What year was that? Do you remember?
Late 80s.
Late 80s.
I think we started 8.
What's it, 88?
88 or 89. Yeah.
Yep, that's right around the same time I started playing too. That's crazy shit, man. Yeah,
so that's kind of how.
What's that? I'm sorry.
That's how that got started. And actually, Misery went for 25 years, and we broke up. I think we're going on about 8 years ago.
Has there been any talks of doing any reunions or doing any kind of shows, just like one-offs or anything like that?
We always said with Misery, the first year we had the singer, and he actually left to move to New York to not start Nausea. I think they had some kind of fallout with they always had a male and a female singer, and Neil left the band for some reason. And we had actually played in New York, so they really wanted Al to come move to New York and sing for them. And he did, and it went for a few years. He was pretty successful with it. They're pretty well known. What was I getting at now?
Just that with the singer. How long did it go? Were there any kind of talks about doing some reunion shows or anything?
I know where is that. So the first year, he would last about a year. We lost him. We got Sid in the band. Sid was actually from Portland. He was going to roadie for us. He lost his ticket to go back to Portland. So he picked up second guitar. So it was the same lineup basically for almost 25 years. And we always said, if anybody left the band or anybody quits, that's it, because Misery was the 4 of us. I don't know if you ever heard of the band Tell Cross.
Nope.
John, our lead guitarist, was getting kind of tired of, I think, just been in the band for a long time. Some of the antics, the drunken shows, and just we'd done it for a long time and kind of did what we're going to do. And he left the band and he went to join Tell Cross, which is members of Amoebics and Voivod.
Okay.
They've since kind of split. Something went on there that the lead singer, the Baron, gave a thanks to on an album, and they were on a relapse, I believe, to somebody that people weren't very happy with him giving a thanks to.
Uh-huh.
So they destroy the albums or something like that. So it was led to kind of a split. John had nothing to do with that really at all. They didn't even talk about, who they're going to give the liner notes to and stuff like that. It's kind of what happened with him and that band. But unfortunate thing was at first I didn't think we would ever talk about it again, but our drummer Gary had some very unfortunate. He's always had bad feeling in his feet.
Sure.
And he stepped on a nail, and he didn't know he stepped on it and broke off in his foot. And I think he's going on 5 years now of has a toe amputated, had another toe amputated, had part of a foot amputated, other foot went bad from sitting around, had toes amputated, and that he hasn't played drums. So that's why we've kind of recently kind of talked about it, but we would never put it back together unless the four of us did it. And Gary's just not able to at this time. We'll put it that way.
Right.
You can never say never. It's been kind of talked about, but then a lot of time has passed and you just never know.
Sure.
So I don't guarantee that, well, you know, you never know, but I guess you never know. Could go either way.
Right. Right.
But it's been a while.
Now, getting some of them shows back in the day, like what were some of the highlights? I mean, do you remember, like some of your first shows? Do you remember some of your favorite places to play? I mean, it kind of sounds like you guys went around a little bit, huh?
We played all over the place. Played a lot of basement shows. Played a lot of those one-off shows where people just rent a venue, a warehouse or something like that. Back in those days, it was a lot of 7th Street Entry and Triple Rock when they first opened that. That was probably our favorite place to play. Sometimes main stage, First Avenue. There was just a lot of those littler clubs. It seemed like a lot of times we were playing a lot of one-off places. And obviously back then, it's like the whole scene. There was no social media then. You hung up a flyer. Everybody went to the shows because there was no interaction unless you were together. Now it's all people just texting. Yeah. You know, there's people don't go to shows and stuff so much anymore because they get their interaction just sitting on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter and stuff like that. But you could put a flyer up, the whole town would be there. There was a lot of partying back then. House shows always had kegs. There was drugs around. So that's that kind of wild. We'll put it that way.
Now, how crazy did Misery get back in the day? Were you guys heavy alcoholics? Did you guys hit the drugs hard? Did you guys let loose? I mean, were there lots of women? Was there lots of craziness or what?
There's a lot of cheap Coke. I'm just going to throw it out there. Yeah. Cheap Coke, cheap liquor, Schlitz malt liquor. There was always a fight when there was a keg of that. Just cheap beer, and it's always, partying on the. I always say, where like the bigger bands would have like the really good Coke, the hotels, the hookers, and the deli trays, and that it was for us. It was just cheap beer, cheap Coke, and dudes. So dudes around. So,
yeah.
Kind of cool extreme of a music for a lot of women to be at shows. It was we'd call them SEGs, somebody else's girlfriend.
Yeah,
that's what we're at shows and that. But we didn't care. It was a lot of fun back then.
Yeah,
I tell you. As long as people didn't get hurt, you didn't rip people off. Like me, I never used a needle once, never tried heroin, stuff like that. Just had some problem with the nose candy.
Yeah.
That got to be not fun anymore. I'm one of the lucky ones that just kind of walked away from it.
Yeah, me too, man.
Been done for a long time.
Yeah, me too.
Our friends didn't make it.
Yeah, I feel you there, man. Being old school, man. That's kind of one of the things, man, that happens, especially when you get into that partying aspect, because a lot of times a lot of younger folks don't understand this either, man. Like they get into that scene and they just keep going and going and going. Where guys like us have been through that shit and made it through on the other side, and there's a lot of people that didn't make it through on the other side of that shit. And It's really difficult when I think back to that stuff of how much wasted time was involved with that shit. You know what I'm saying?
Luckily for me, I've always had kind of like I've suffered from anxiety. I was always worried about, I kind of raised myself. My mom wasn't around a lot. I said I didn't have a father figure, brothers and sisters. So I've always been really responsible. And a lot of that time, this early Misery stuff, I was managing something. So I was like turned it up a lot on the weekends and then had to turn it off. And I was always so worried about losing a job or something like that I could almost turn it off at times. And then when it was time to party, you just go nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a lot of people don't realize it's almost like a disease for some people. They can't get out of it.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just when you're hiding in the basement, looking out the windows, doing it by yourself, it's not fun anymore. It's just time to quit.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where that went.
Yeah, you pretty much just summed it up right there, man. Because
Yeah.
I used to deal it a lot, back in the day, and I'm not afraid to say that, because I did my
Yep.
time, and I got caught up in that whole scene and shit, and just going out and having a bunch in your pocket, and what I learned from a friend of mine who actually was, he got me started at dealing the shit. And basically what he would do is he would come into a room with, a quarter ounce or whatever, and he would give everybody in the whole party a line, right? And then he would sit back and he would go, "You just wait." And he would never bring a scale.
Yep. They're going to be swarming. So yeah.
Yep. And he would just make his money the whole time, and it was like we would party for free, and they'd be sharing with us, we'd be sharing with them, so it would just go crazy. And then at the end of the night, you're heading home, but you're looking in your pocket, and you still got a teener in your pocket, you know what I mean? And like the party's over, but you just keep going,
Yeah, it's hard to quit.
Yeah,
it's like you have to run out of it to quit, pretty much.
Yeah,
I know. I was never a dealer, but one of my best friends was.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of cheap uncut because discount because it's a good friend or whatever. But yeah, you never make any money if you're doing your own product. So he did a lot of his stuff too. But basically, I haven't seen him for a long time too, because part of that was walking away. Is you can't really. I don't think that there's a trigger anymore. I've seen people, been around people that do it now at shows. I'll just sit back and have a couple beers and watch.
I get annoyed by it.
People. Yeah, you have to be on coke to enjoy people on coke. They're annoying.
Yeah, they're annoying as hell. Well, we've got a great supporter, Adam D from the band Forever in Gray. He's always supportive on the podcast, and he's always coming up with great questions and stuff. And he said, "Mr. Todd, your tattoos are gorgeous. Do you have any meaning behind those tattoos, or do you just like to collect them? Please forgive me if I sound disrespectful. It's not my intentions to be a dick."
I was not a dick at all. I always tell people our heyday was in the 90s. Tattoos were not real popular back then, and I had sleeves in the 90s, and everybody would always ask me if I just got out of prison. I would walk across streets, you could hear people locking their doors and stuff like that. And I actually took an apprenticeship from Neil Grant, who worked from Uracu's shop.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the 90s.
Lake Street, right?
Acme Tattoo, Don Nolan. So I didn't work out of a shop, but I had like an apprenticeship. I was able to get professional equipment from Don Nolan. I think I don't know if he's still around or if he passed. He was old. He must have passed on by now. I know that Neil Grant committed suicide. He was working out of Uracu's shop. I got an apprenticeship, got the equipment and stuff, and I was tattooing a lot of people in the scene. You could always find all the gutter punks there. They were always doing the stick and pokes. So I had like a lot of people to practice on in that. So actually a lot of the tattoos and stuff I have on this arm, I've touched up myself or tattooed myself. And then obviously I've got like really nice tattoos. I've got shitty tattoos. They're all just kind of stuck together. It's not like really big pieces or whatever. And then when it started getting really popular, that's when I went more onto my hands and neck. So that's kind of how the tattooing goes, and that they've been kept kind of fresh, because you'll find out after about 5, 6, 7 years, they start to fade out a lot, and you'll have them touched up, or I'll touch them up myself if I can. And I always tell people, a lot of people don't want to touch up tattoos, but if you go to a shop where there's an apprentice that just wants anybody in their chair, you can usually get a good deal on somebody just filling in some color that really faded or whatever. I haven't really done much in the last, I'm going to say 5 years. I've got the ones on my neck are probably about 5 years old.
Where'd you get your last one done at?
Dan Dittmer from Dragonland.
Oh yeah.
He did the ones on my neck. I wanted to go to somebody that was really good, because you can't cover those up. So
now you said that as they started becoming more popular, you went beyond. When we were younger, that was the thing. Like, you didn't want to go beyond into your hands or on your face or on your neck. None of that shit was around.
I went to about here and here, yeah, and then even jobs where you could get where you wear T-shirts and that. They always made me wear long sleeve shirts, and a lot of times I was managing, so I had to wear a suit and that. And it was long sleeve, and didn't really see them. I never had to wear makeup or anything to cover them, but trouble getting jobs sometimes. Now it's primetime TV.
Yeah.
Obviously, being in the hair industry the last 12 years, there's no problems getting jobs, tattoos. I also, wonder someday when I step away from the hair industry, what it's going to be like now with the neck tattoos. And I've got them all over my hands and fingers and that. So. But, it's a more widely accepted, but I know there's still some of the older school places that kind of frown upon it a bit.
Sure. Yeah. I was kind of curious about that too, because I remember you having fucking full sleeves when we were young, man. And now you've kind of always had a look about you, man. You had like a crazy like flat top for a long time, and then you had like long hair for a long time. Like, where were you drawing this look from, man? You like always had like dark pants on, dark clothes. You were always wearing black. You always had like this. You were always well put together as opposed to like hanging out with a lot of the gutter punks and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like you said, where were you drawing that from?
Like I said, I didn't always hang out with one scene, and a lot of people did. So I hung out. It was called like the Dark Siders.
Sure.
I kind of jumped scenes. I was always, like I said, more into the metal aspect of it. So it was almost kind of like a conglomeration of all of that. And most of my life I had the long hair. But there was times I was wearing like rubber shirts. I always had like leather pants and stuff like that. I guess that's just kind of I almost moved to town younger like that too. I had the spiky jackets and all the patches and buttons. And I moved to town. I had a red and black mohawk. And then it just went to the long hair, probably because I was so used to it as a child.
Right.
I mean, I had to swear my whole grade school and all that. My mom kept me with really long hair. I looked like a little girl.
Yeah, and back then when we were kids, man, back then, like if you had long hair, that was like the end of the what were you born in the 70s, right?
Earlier than that. I'm an old man.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'll probably be retiring in 12, 13 years, something like that.
No shit.
I'm getting up there.
So you probably experienced this a lot more than I did too, because I got a lot of shit for having long hair too back then.
I got picked on all the time. So yeah. So that was even quite a bit of a different look. And then hanging out in the punk rock scene, some people kind of questioned because I didn't quite fit. I remember one time we played Gilman Street, and I remember Jello Biafra coming up to me and saying, "Nice pants." And here's a hardened punk rock club, and I was wearing a pair of light blue velvet pants. I remember that when he came up and started talking to me. So even then, I was kind of, always in the scene, but kind of I would stand out from it. Sometimes people were usually pretty accepting of it, but like I said, didn't really fit the rules either. So I've always been kind of an outskirts, even now, I guess.
Right.
But as you get older, the hair isn't as thick.
Yeah.
So then the hair migrates. That's kind of what happened.
I got it. I got you. Yeah. So now you kind of said a little bit earlier about some of the rules in like punk rock. What kind of rules were there? I mean, wasn't it kind of like any other group? Like you're looking for a spot to fit in, and like you could do whatever you want. I always thought like punk rockers were like anti, everything else.
Yeah, I hate to say this, and I'm sure some people don't like hearing it. It's almost like you have to believe a certain way politically. Religion's not really a big part of it, but they always have a preconceived notion of how you should think, what you should believe, and stuff like that. And also, I think a lot of people, this is back in the day too, a lot of the way you were dressed, certain people would dress more punk than others, so they were seen as more punk or have certain views, and those that didn't fit with everybody were seen as not quite as punk. There was more cliques, we'll put it that way, back in the day. Now I see it as, I don't even know what you want to call it now. I still feel a lot of the hardened punks are still the older people. Now I think a lot of it is for Instagram, TikTok, getting likes, followers, and that's so they're really going nuts on the look. But I don't think it's so much, I think it's more of a fashion than like a state of mind.
Sure.
But it's not like some of the younger punks aren't punks. It's kind of went, I think it's lost its meaning a lot. We'll put it that way.
Sure.
And And it's just me too, because I was more of the outskirts. Sometimes I didn't feel like I quite fit in because I've always been apolitical. So the politics, I don't even want to hear it. Left wing, right wing, presidential. I've never voted. I'm not a registered voter. I just don't want to be involved with any of that stuff. So I was never part of that. Religion was never really big, but I'm agnostic, so I don't talk about religion and that. But I've always been kind of, like I said, an outskirts, even with that.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it actually absolutely does, and it probably keeps you out of a lot of that nonsense. It seems to me like it could go one way or the other, and like you said, political ideologies and beliefs and shit like that, man, are really, people fucking will fight at a drop of a hat for that stuff. You know what I mean? And
even their friends, you see that these days. So yeah, luckily for me, it's just not a part of my life, so I never talk about it or get into anybody's business about it, or even my best friends I don't care what they believe, they're still my friend. You know what I mean? They can talk about whatever. As long as they're not hurting somebody, I don't care.
Now back in the old school time, old school punk rock stuff, in the late 80s, early 90s, what was the feeling like? Was there like a real big anti Nazi racism type of thing? Were there sections where there were people against stuff like that, or how did that work back then?
I don't think there was ever a lot of racism in the scene back then. The skinheads were really big too, and they were always the anti-racist skinheads.
Right.
So that was even part of the scene.
Right.
Never really seen it. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I know. I think I seen it maybe a handful of times at some of them old metal shows where or even a Cro-Mag show. I think I saw some skinheads getting beat up by anti-racist skinheads right out in front of First Avenue.
So yeah, they'd always get run out. That's what I noticed.
Yeah.
So I'm from somewhere else. Minneapolis has never been big for any of the scene being racist. We'll put it that way.
Right.
And then when racists would come into town, they'd get run out real quick.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I mean, to this day, that kind of seems how it's been going a lot. It's a great feeling to know that your scene stands behind that type of shit and pushes them the fuck out. You know what I mean? It's there's no room for it here. You know what I mean? We're struggling enough trying to be musicians and actually enjoying the shows and having places, especially with this COVID nonsense going on and it just being gone. Now your newer band, well, I guess it would be new-ish, right? You said before. Yep. It's been quite a while. You guys were still doing, and that's the Bonefire project. Now, yep. How did that all come together, and how did that get going?
Long story. At some point when we were in Misery, things were kind of stalemating a bit.
Sure.
So like a couple of the other members were in other bands, and I thought I'd give it a try too. And this is where I actually was looking at some dates. It was like Bonefire's actually been going for 15 years. It was me and Joker, the lead guitarist, started a Misfits Danzig tribute band for fun, except we were going to do Graves, Misfits, and New Danzig at the time, not the old stuff. So we started it as like a for fun band. We actually started, the band was named was Thunderhead. And we actually got a letter from a lawyer. There was a band called the Thunderheads in town that played at Mayslax, was their claim to fame. And they tried to sue us over the names. Like, we never even heard of these people. So we changed it to Bonefire, just to avoid any of that BS. And the reason I like that name is because when you hear the name, you don't have a preconceived notion of what type of music it is.
Right.
We started as that tribute band. We only played out once because it seems like every time we were getting ready to play out, we'd go through a singer. So the singer was kind of the revolving door. And then it eventually, actually the drummer we have now, how old the band is. He was our original drummer. And when we met him, he was 19 and he auditioned in his parents' garage. And just as a fluke during the drummer for Bonefire that we had, which would have been our third one, Sid played drums for a while. That's also in Bonefire. He moved to San Diego. So I just, for the hell of it, I threw Mike a text, hey, do you want to join the band again? It had been 10 years. And he's like, oh, sure. And we were kind of surprised by it. So we actually have an original member drummer now. And now it's like he's 34. So he's not like the skinny little 19-year-old kid anymore. So what happened is he was in the band. Joker ended up moving. I'm pretty sure it was Vegas for his job. So the band kind of disbanded. And Joker had moved, and this went on for a few years. Joker had moved back to town, and Misery had called it quits. So we put the band back together, and we decided that we're gonna just play originals and not do the tribute thing anymore, because it wasn't like a for fun thing. And then we got Ben on vocals, and Sid was actually playing drums then. Me and Sid have been playing music together for over 30 years.
Oh, wow.
He was guitarist in Misery, also one of the guitarists, but he also played drums in the Murderers back in the day. So he joined on as a drummer. And we did a couple LPs. We got Keith in before we recorded our second LP, and then it went more thrashier, I guess. And Ben had left the band before the pandemic. Pandemic hit. We didn't play it was like 15 months. We had a bunch of shows lined up. We had a mini tour lined up. That happened to everybody. Took a long break, and then what we were going to do with the mini tour that we had coming up, and Ben had left the band. We were going to go back to Sid, and I sang in Misery, and Joker had sang a bit in a band. The band was called Troublemaker in California. So we were just going to do the vocals. But then there's a couple people close to us, including Joker. When Sid and I would sing, and basically I write most of the music and lyrics, and Sid will write kind of what I don't write. And Joker's always the guy that'll jump in and just write the lead guitar parts for it, not the structure. We sounded like Misery with us singing. And some people we didn't want to be the Misery clones. So we decided, coming out of pandemic, got a new drummer. Why don't we try to audition for a different singer? And I was surprised too, because we're just like a local bar gigging band, that we actually had a lot of people contact us. And I think got it down to 2 tryouts, and we had one guy that would have been a shoe-in, the safe pick. Been in the scene a long time, respected, and then we had the female come in that was she sang like backups in like a folk punk band, and we just kind of decided at the time, it's like, why don't we go a different direction? Because she actually is a singer, not somebody that's going to growl and scream and that. And we've kind of gotten to the point where you'd like to be able to play shows that aren't just always punk rock shows. Misery was always kind of pigeonholed to punk rock shows, even though we were more crust punk.
Yeah.
Bonefire, we did play a lot of shows that weren't just punk shows, but I think we kind of want to branch out a bit more and be able to play any type of gig.
Sure.
That's what was cool about bringing the female on, is it actually is going to have Krista gives us a different sound, because she's actually singing.
Right.
But she can a little bit aggressive, but it's not like a shriek or a scream or a growl or anything like that. But it'll be interesting. It sounds cool. So, our original drummer is more of like a alternative rock drummer, so we got to change it up a little bit. But it'll sound kind of sound a lot the same. He's like a single kick, where Heath was like a total thrash metal double kick, but Sid was a single kick drummer. Yeah. So kind of go back to like the first EP, but I've been trying to write stuff that's a little more in depth, I guess.
Yeah.
But kind of keep the same sound.
Now I want to back up one more second, because I'm kind of curious. Like, how many demos did Misery do back in the day? Like, how many albums did you guys do?
A lot. I don't even know. Now, here's the funny thing. Somehow during the pandemic, almost everything we ever released got re-released by different record labels, and they're still doing it. And like the last one did like a wooden box set with flags in it. I don't know if people got really nostalgic because of the lockdown or what was going on, but it seems like Misery has gotten a lot more popular over the last couple of years for some reason.
Wow.
It's like hitting us, and it's like currently coming out where all of our stuff's being re-released by different people and they're like putting together some pretty nice packages for it. The last thing I got was some laser etching that came in one of the albums, like on a piece of sheet metal. And this guy, I think they're in Russia, that are doing like the wooden cases where they're actually etching designs into these cases and that. So I don't know what happened with Misery over the last couple of years, but it's always been the bootleggers that always did better than we did, but I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. I don't know how many albums. There's a lot of singles in that, and we were always a band. We didn't release a ton of stuff all at once. It was always a little bit here and there. And a lot of people say that our best stuff was our last two albums, actually, which is kind of strange for a band because everybody always likes the earlier stuff better.
Sure, but you could probably grew a little bit more, and I suppose you probably feel that now with the Bonefire stuff. Like you said, you're trying to get a little bit more depth in it, and with the new drummer and the new vocalist, I think you'll be able to branch out a little bit more. We either grow a lot when we get older, or we what they would say, sell out.
Never did the sellout thing, but the one thing that didn't happen over the pandemic is shortly before the pandemic, I befriended Paul Allender.
Yeah.
From Filth. He wrote almost all their earlier stuff. They were on tour in 2014. I could get dates wrong. On tour in 2014 from England, and he met his now wife here in Minneapolis and moved to Minneapolis, and became a little bit involved with the label we were on. So I met him. And then one day, kind of as a joke, it's like, if you ever decide to start, playing music or something again, you should give me a call and I could play bass. Well, that actually happened. And for like the last year, and this is all new to me, where we're like doing remote stuff.
Yeah.
He moved out of town here after a while to move closer to his job. He's a truck driver. And he's probably writing the best stuff he's ever written, because obviously I've heard it all because we're going back and forth remotely with it. So the structures for a full album are written. We've got a singer in Sweden. There's an orchestra and composer in Poland, drummer in Virginia Beach, rhythm guitarist in California. So that's like, we're just sending files around. So I've also got that going on, and that's something that I've never done, is sat at home and recorded stuff over a computer. So that's one thing the pandemic brought, that at least gave me something to do during the pandemic, because this band started out, it was like a month before COVID hit. Just getting going, but it worked out because it's like a universal band or whatever. So I guess that's not the sellout part, but that's obviously record label picked him up as soon as they heard that he was going to write another album, and it's really in depth, and there's like a lot of orchestration going on. So it's a little different than a Cradle of Filth, but you can hear the influence, obviously, because he wrote a lot of those earlier albums.
Yeah. So is it like black metal? Is it like darkened metal of some sort, or what?
I say metal, kind of gothic metal sounding.
Okay.
The thing that throws it so much is there's a lot of orchestration, and like really good orchestration, like a lot of instruments going on that end too. So it otherwise it just kind of sounds like gothic death metal, except for that. So now it sounds more like, I'm going to say, like horror movie soundtrack.
Sure. Real symphonic, huh? That's fantastic. That's really cool. What now? How many EPs do you have with the Bonefire stuff?
One EP and one album.
One EP and one album. And you said it's been a while since you guys have played. You have a show coming up here in August, or is it September?
What are the dates here? One in about 6 weeks, and then one a month later. I think it's the first week of September, first week of August. And the one in this is July, August, September. The one in September is at Part Wolf, and it's kind of a memorial weekend for Bob Murder, that died of cancer. So it's like a 2-day fest. I don't think we were quite ready to take the show at that time when it was offered. So we're kind of trying to scramble now to get ready with a new drummer and singer. And we've got the oddest schedules. Yeah. When I work 12-hour shifts, it's like everybody has such a different job. It's hard to get everybody together. So we're kind of scrambling to get a set together. But our first show is actually going to be the one at the Terminal Bar. But we just took the one earlier because it was offered, and it was a friend of ours, especially Sid was in a band with Bob Murder, and so it was kind of important to try to get something together for that. And that's the only two shows, because what we kind of wanted to do coming back was, because it was a newer lineup, is let's not concentrate. Our history is kind of our history.
Yep.
Let's concentrate on just writing. But now it's like, ah, crap, we got to kind of learn some of our older stuff so we can play these shows. Otherwise, we're just going to kind of regroup, write, and do another album was going to be our first. And over the when I wasn't doing the stuff with it's called the Unnamed Horrors.
Mm-hmm.
Where I was writing stuff for Bonefire, and now because of that, the writing process is different because now I actually record on the computer. I've got superior drummers, so I'm kind of writing the drum parts and that. So the pandemic kind of changed things a bit for me anyway. They've had to upgrade a lot of my equipment and that because of that. So that's kind of how this stuff's being written now. And now you throw it up on Dropbox and, oh, this is my idea now. It's not just me plucking in the practice room is actually in my house here. It's not just plucking in the basement now. It's actually, recorded onto something, drums, and then present it that way. Our singer is actually a really good poet. So she's going to take over the lyrics now, which is good for me. I don't have to worry about the lyrics. Now we don't have to worry about singing anymore. And it was a bit difficult because when you write to play, you don't necessarily write to sing it also. So we were having it was a little bit of a learning curve trying to sing the stuff we had written in the past when we had a singer. So that's kind of the direction that went. So I guess that's the only good thing that came out of the pandemic is I've actually been a lot busier actually with music and I haven't left the house.
What now? What type of gear are you recording with? Do you got Pro Tools or are you using a different DOS or what?
I'm just doing Mixcraft. And then obviously Interface, DI box and that. And I've picked up a couple different basses to have different sounds. I've always been a Thunderbird guy. I got a Gibson Thunderbird, Blackbird. I always played that. Now I've got I just picked up the last bass. I actually picked up a Rickenbacker again. Haven't had one of those for a long time. I had for a short time in Misery, but I didn't think it fit the music really at that time. And I've always kicked myself in the ass for getting rid of it because they're not cheap. And then I've never liked Fender basses, but now I got a P bass and a jazz bass. And
which do you think sound better?
That's kind of a weird question. I picked up a P bass for $300
sure.
And threw up those Geezer Butler pickups in it. And that bass sounds almost as good as all the rest of my basses. I don't know if you've heard of those EGM Geezer Butler pickups.
I haven't. No.
Really good, and that's the cheapest bass in there. You would think that still my go-to bass is the Gibson Blackbird, and that was of course it was maybe it's 2000 2001. It was a Nicky Six signature series. They kind of built around his specifications. So I've always kind of gravitated to that bass, but now I'm kind of using a little bit of everything. And even with I'll just call it the Universal band, I'm going to try to use like a different bass on every track.
Sure.
That just sound. And I'm not playing with as much distortion. Well, actually for that band, there'll be no distortion because it'll be mixed somewhere else. I got to play it clean. And even lately I've been trying to mess around with, I've always used a lot of distortion, trying to kind of get away from that. I was always the Rat pedal guy. The Proco Rat.
Yep.
The older chipsets, and now I'm starting to get more into the dark class pedals and that, trying to kind of keep it nasty, but you can hear the notes a little bit more.
Oh yeah.
And punchier instead of a lot of sustain.
Sure.
So I've been playing around a lot more lately. I guess that was all the sitting at home, not doing anything for 14 months.
Right. Now, now we kind of talked about this off the air. You said that you were doing a lot of retail, and I was asking about like the hairdressing stuff because I had heard that you were a hairdresser, and I was like, no fucking way is that dude a hairdresser. And like I said, man, you've always had a together look. You've always had to me, you were like kind of like a Lemmy. You know what I mean? Like Lemmy had that specific style all the time, and he didn't change from it. And you were always well put together, man, as opposed to playing in like kind of a crust punk band and stuff. Like I always thought you stood out a lot more than the rest of the fellas did. You know what I mean?
I'm going to say the biggest thing too, is kind of funny is, part of the crust punk is not taking a shower. I was the guy at the show with cologne on. I will say that. So that probably set me apart too. But I said, telling you the retail thing. you get trapped in retail management. It's like all you can do. No matter what retail job it is, it's still retail. You're selling a unit, facility management, hiring. It's lower wages usually. People, so there's a lot of turnover, training, a lot of shrink in that. And I had taken them with a relative who was a career counselor. I did a Myers-Briggs testing where they do all this testing. They do personality testing. And number one came out musician. Number two came out hairstylist.
So what kind of questions did they have on that? What kind of questions did they have on that thing?
I don't know specifically. There's a lot of questions, just like personality questions. Would you rather do this? Would you rather do that? Do you feel you think this way, that way? And it just comes down to different career choices. I guess if you just Google Myers-Briggs.
I'll have to look that up.
So it's like I'd never thought about that before. And I had some friends that either rented a chair or owned a salon, so I went and sat in on it for a while. I was like, yeah, I think I could give this a shot. And I was, you go to school for a year, and I was super passionate. I couldn't get enough of it for about the first 5 years. And then the little things over time kind of get to you. And then it basically ended up as full-time hairstylist to salon manager. So here we go again, back into management. That's what I was trying to get away from. But you're so used to making a certain wage. It was really hard to, kind of start over. And as a hairstylist, your wages are all over because you're working for commission,
right,
tips, and you're busy. Sometimes you're not busy. Sometimes people cancel, no show, move around appointments, stuff like that. So becoming a manager again, that made the pay a little more uniform. I guess you'd kind of know what to expect. And as you kind of fall out and get tired of certain things about the industry, that's where the teaching came in. And that's where I'm at now. And I have been for, I'm going to say 3.5 years, something like that. It was but now I'm actually not doing hair at all. And the funny thing is right before I was teaching, I slowly got out of doing hair. Then I actually started doing makeup for a bit. But then I quit doing that. I was working for Benefit Cosmetics. And now it's just teaching.
Wow, man, you've had an interesting fucking life, Todd. I give you that, dude. Like you've done some different stuff, man. You know what I mean? Like you come from lacrosse to move to Minnesota. You hook up with a bunch of crazy punk rock kids and start a punk rock band that lasted 30 years or something, 25 years, 30 years.
Yeah, and thank God that happened too, because I got into misery right away. Remember, I moved here to be a cop.
Yeah,
I started theater downtown where we had off-duty cops in their uniform, so I was hearing a lot of stories, and that was a rough theater. And we started touring. The nose candy came in, so I never became a police officer. So I'm kind of glad it happened that way. And you can't say, well, it's too bad, you went to school to be, you didn't become a police officer. I mean, look at it now. That's something you definitely want to go into.
Right.
At that time, I ended up working for that theater company for 17 years and managing. And it was actually the pay as a manager was the same as like a lower grade, like a cadet or a newer police officer.
No shit.
So I never got out of, past the driving shooting range, visiting the jails type of thing. I never got any farther than that. So kind of glad I didn't go that route. Nope. And I would have, I'm not very tall, and I saw some of the ways that the police officers then, the big cops versus the smaller cops, how people would treat them. They always had to have a go at the small guys.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that happened, that I never became an officer, obviously.
Right.
So the punk thing totally saved me for that. But when I was in school to be a police officer, it was funny. I had a mohawk, and I had a couple tattoos, my ear pierced and all that. This is La Crosse, Wisconsin, and it was all people from farms, basically, that I was in school with. And you had to have a 2-year degree then. So I even stood out then. People didn't know what to think of me at first, but then as they got to know me, find out that, I'm cream puff.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm glad it went that direction when I moved here.
So what exactly made you want to be gravitate towards being a police officer? Like that just seems kind of crazy to me. Like just as like a boyhood dream or something.
When you're a little kid, I think it was more of I got picked on a lot.
Yeah.
When like I said, back then, La Crosse is like a town made up of people from farms, and the main college is Phi Ed, and there's 140 bars on one street.
Right.
So you come from that type of town, and I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm Lebanese Italian, so I'm not like, I don't look like a lot of even people in La Crosse because we're very dark eyes, jet black hair, and my skin probably isn't really dark, but is a little tanner than other people. So I would get picked on a lot from that. I think it was kind of one of those. I thought maybe I'd feel more in control if I was an officer versus constantly getting picked on. Then I just went the weightlifting route instead, and that's now even today I'm 200 pounds. I'm not. I don't lift weights as much. I haven't quit. Kind of really slowed down during the pandemic, but that helps being an extra 50 pounds. Plus, I'm just not hanging out with the people that in the past, like when you're younger, that you would get picked on,
Yeah.
But I think that's probably why the police thing. You're just a little kid. You don't know.
Yeah.
Back then it was like, how many things can you be back in those days? And, but then the music thing was there already too. So, and it just ended up, the music thing happened first.
Yeah. That little bit. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm still doing that. So the music thing's been going since I was, late teens. Movie theater thing went for 17 years. So that was a lot of life right there.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Trying different things. And then it was retail management and then hairdressing. Yeah. But it's good. I can actually, my resume lists like 6 jobs. That's my whole life. So I've stuck with things a long time.
Yeah, that's even crazy. When we were talking about partying a little bit and shit, you were like, I was really responsible, and like you were able to shut it off and go into work and not lose your job because you're managing and doing shit like that. That's pretty solid, man. Because I know when I was back then, I just was like, this job ain't working out. I'm gonna go hang out on the street some more.
Yeah, well, I had the money to pay for it then too. That way, like I said, never had to rip people off and go that route. Just, did it while it was fun, and then it wasn't fun anymore, and there was time to step down, but it was fun for a while.
Yeah.
And like, 90s are a blur. There's a party and stuff in the 90s. But I never tried heroin, or I was never a pill person or anything like that. It was just the nose candy. Never did a needle once.
Now, is that pretty prevalent in the punk scene? Does that pop up quite a bit?
The needles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm talking more in the past. Now what's going on so much, I don't hang out with it.
Sure.
That's certainly what's going on. But I can tell you that when needles were involved, a lot of those friends aren't around anymore.
Right.
We've had a lot of friends pass. A lot of times it was from speedballs. That's where they were mixing heroin and coke, which I've never tried, which is unfortunate. It's like, they either end up in jail or dead if they don't quit.
Yeah. Are there many guys that are like from your crew or like surrounding folks that you knew that made it out with you, man? Are there
Yeah, or they're dead.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't see these people so much. We still see them when we play shows. That's why I like to play shows, is because I'm pretty much a hermit now.
Yeah.
But when shows, you get out and about and you meet your old friends and stuff like that. But obviously they had to have gotten out of it, or they wouldn't be around so much. I mean, we're talking 90s. It doesn't, for you and I, it doesn't sound like that's that long ago, but it actually is like 25 years.
For sure.
I mean, that's a while ago.
Yeah.
20 years ago, that was kind of the heyday of all that stuff.
Now, Adam D wants to know, did you ever try to help your friends get off those drugs?
No, I just distanced myself pretty much. Nobody's going to want to get off the drugs unless they want to get off the drugs. You can tell them whatever you want to. They're not going to be ready to do anything until they're ready to do it themselves.
I agree.
So that's, you never really try to help anybody. You're just going to be disappointed, I think. I can't say that it's always like that with people, but I think you know that you're not ready until you're ready. Somebody telling you, you're just going to get mad at that person and not listen to them, or not hang out with them, or just whatever.
Yep. Call them a fucking square and go to the next party, You just
don't hang out with them anymore.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't know.
I had one of the guys from American Head Charge, the drummer of American Head Charge. I had gotten in trouble around 2004. I'd gotten caught with some drugs and was looking at about 4 years, going to jail for 4 years, and I was really trying to like clean myself up at that time. And I put myself through treatment and like did all of this before the courts made me do it. You know what I mean? Like I did my Rule 25 and went and kind of cleaned myself up. And I had some relapses in that time frame too, and I ran into him and he was on tour and they were having, their own turmoils and their own types of things going on in their lives too. But having him look at me and go, "Hey man, like I got really upset with myself, man, because I was fucking high, and I'd known he had gotten straight, and I confided in him, like, hey man, I really want to be where you're at right now." And he looked at me and he goes, "You know what, man? It's all part of distancing yourself and changing is having those hiccups, but knowing that you fell down and being able to get back up and get back on that path." So it was like he just told me it was okay because it was a part of the healing process.
Yeah.
And that's I needed to fucking hear that. And I haven't fucked with the shit really, for a long, long time. And it, I credit Chris for telling me that at that particular time. And, we both went back and forth to it, and partying and drinking and carrying on. But
because I even did that too. When I decided I was over with it, you're always going to have a few relapses and have a few weekends here and there. And then it seems like, it's longer and longer and longer between a relapse until it just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Or, relapses might be more of smaller scale and a few lines or something. And then after a while, it's just like, screw that stuff. I'm done. And I always try to tell myself too, it's been a long time since I've done any of that stuff. You don't know what the hell people are putting in that shit anymore. Back then it was like, remember I said, it was like I was getting it from a good friend that was kind of big up there. So you kind of knew, and I got most of my stuff from him. You knew what you were getting.
Yeah.
Now you don't want to mess with it. I mean, even for just that alone, you don't know what the hell you're getting these days.
Yeah.
It seems like nobody cares about anybody anymore. So they just put anything in that shit to cut it or mess with people. Or I keep hearing about fentanyl. I don't know why people put fentanyl in Coke and where are they getting fentanyl? I don't even know how the whole drug thing works anymore.
Right.
But won't even want to mess with something because I bet you anything if I decided it's been 15 years or whatever the hell, let's party some weekend, I'd probably drop dead on the first line.
Yeah.
Because it's just been so long and just probably don't even want to go there. So I'm not.
Yeah, that's a huge fear for me too, man. Because it'll pop up every now and again. I was in South Dakota last weekend at a death fest. You know what I mean? Like I think it's the second festival that I've actually been able to do photography with my new camera and shit. And this gal comes up and she was a bartending, and she comes out from behind the bar and she's like, all of a sudden she's our waitress. I was like, oh hey, you're doing the waitress thing. And she goes, oh, I got kicked out from behind the bar. And I looked at her and I'm like, why'd you get kicked out from behind the bar? And she looked at me and she started talking, and you could just see her jaw start moving and shit. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It made me fucking uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Cause I was just like, man, I remember those days.
Yeah. I don't miss them. But the thing is luckily I got out when it wasn't so much fun anymore, that I actually can say, I had fun stories with it too. And it's like the whole scene was kind of doing it then. So it was always like a big party. There's always something to do. And then, so I actually have some fun memories of it. And because I didn't go so deep into it that, ODs or any problems with police, I didn't really deal it or anything like that. But, I've even, one of the things with the lesson I took from Misery is that, towards the end of Misery, I was more into my hermit days, and I wouldn't party or drink or anything really at all, except when Misery played. Then you show up at 3, you get drink tickets, you get drunk, you play at 12. You don't remember playing the show because you were so drunk. Bonefire's been together with this for like 8 years now. I haven't been drunk on stage since. So I've had a few beers. So I've even stepped away from the drinking at shows. And some people probably thought, I was an alcoholic because when Misery would play, I was always drunk, but I was kind of couldn't wait for that show because we'd play 4 shows a year because I was going to get out and see friends and drink.
Yeah.
And then, let's just say you're waiting for 9 hours, end up drinking too much.
Yeah.
But that was away from Misery that I'm glad that I got over that the whiskey and Coke thing is done. Now it's like you'll go and drink a few beers. You get so full from drinking the beer, a few beers, you just quit. And that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, that's when you know you're old school, is when you're you're drinking a few beers and you're like, man, I'm bloated. I think I'm done.
Yeah, and you remember playing the show.
Yeah, no shit.
Misery was around for so long that sometimes I was really surprised people record the sets. It's like I wouldn't even remember playing the show, and it's like, damn, I was playing okay. You're like almost on autopilot.
Yeah.
Even sing, you're really surprised by it, and. But at the same time, not everybody was drinking that heavily on stage. So, that kind of was part of the things that people got tired with over, a long period with Misery too, is a couple of us drank a lot, and that at shows where maybe we wouldn't drink so much on other days and that, and you're sitting around for so long. Back when the nose candy was happening, kind of the whole band was in it at that time. So that ended a long time ago. But then it kind of turned to the drinking thing, and yeah, that's all over with now.
Now, do you remember those early days, man? Like how long did it take for you guys to go from like the opening spot to the mid spot to like the feature spot to the headlining spot? And it's changed so much since we were younger cats. You know what I'm saying? But do you remember like how it all played out? Did you guys skyrocket up real fast to headlining positions, or did you work your way up?
For the underground scene, kind of think about what was going on back then. It was more like Husker Du replacements, Solism, that type in town, and we didn't sound anything like that. I remember we put out an ad in Maximum Rock and Roll for our first single, and it was right away because I guess nobody else in town really sounded like that.
Sure.
It was on a small scale. It was that's when music was actually underground.
Right. Where
now it's, nothing's really underground. So I wouldn't say we're big time or whatever, but it was enough to, tour US, go overseas, somebody else pay for the albums and that type of underground thing. And like I said, it was then also good enough for like this whole revival of people listening to it again. And that was always it, is I don't think at that time there was anybody else that sounded like this.
Right.
So
and thinking back, at that time, you said this a few times in the interview here. There was no internet back then, so it was all word of mouth. It was all like, and you guys probably thought it was like a fucking, a big thing if you were able to get into some of these fanzines and some of the magazines and like, take an ad out saying, hey, this is our single, this is the way things were. Because I remember when we first started, it was like, you were fucking so stoked to be in some sort of, metal fanzine or, you know what I mean? Being able to trade your tapes with other cool bands and, whatever,
Yep. So the music scene now, I always tell people you've got to love playing music, because if you're trying to get big now, you might as well not even get started.
Right.
It's so oversaturated, so insanely oversaturated right now with music. And don't think you're going to sell a bunch of CDs, tapes, albums, because it's all streaming. Everybody has a very short attention span now, it seems, with music. And they're, especially with Gen Z, it's all Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, they totally get all their music that way. They're not buying that kind of stuff. I don't even know how some of the bands now that are making it even make it, because there's just so much going on. And I hear bands all the time that sound really good and I've never heard of them.
Right.
There's just so much out there, and that people are just whatever happens to be when they put their genre in, when they got their listening on their phones, on their headphones on their phones, listening to music. I don't think they're listening to anything specifically. It's just whatever comes on. And so it's tough. It's tough to sell anything. Even with Bonefire, we don't sell shit, but Bandcamp and stuff like that, it gets listened to a lot, but people aren't buying it. You know what I mean? A lot of times there's a lot of hits on it, but nobody's buying it.
Right.
And that's kind of the way. So, like, I hate to say this now, the thing to do now when you record, it's almost like you have to set your sights more on the streaming services than selling your music. And the best way to sell your music now is you have to go on tour and you have to make money on merch.
Right.
That's kind of the only way people are making money now. And as we get older, the touring thing doesn't sound so great, because I remember we used to sleep on floors and stuff like that and go for long periods of time. Now I want a hotel and you want to be to bed at midnight, and it's not quite the same. So you don't want to do all the touring, and seems like when you have merch, it's a lot easier to sell it out of town than it is in town. So you also got to kind of get a takeaway from that too. I mean, that's probably different for other bands. Bands might have more luck with it, but if you don't like playing music, just for the love of playing music now, it's such a completely different landscape.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I was just at, like I said, in Sioux Falls last weekend, and for a 2-day metal, like a death metal fest. And, I was really surprised actually at one of the headlining bands had like their entire collection all on vinyl, which was really crazy because people still do buy vinyl here and there, but it's not like it used to be, man. I remember, like you said, with the Kiss album, like I remember sitting down with Kiss Alive 2 and opening and pulling the sleeve out, and they opening it up, and it's their whole stage set up with the 2 risers coming up with the cats on it, and like this big fantastic production of shit that they did, and I mean I've got a small record collection now, and it's a lot of like old school rock and roll shit, or Carcass, or like Acid Bath, or I mean, I even bought I think the last album I bought was one of the Deftones albums, and it's like it's so crazy to me to see bands still selling records, but like I wanted to buy all of them because I collect a little bit of vinyl, but it was like fucking 90 degrees out, and I didn't want to go put them in my car because it would have been fucking spaghetti noodles by the time the day was done. You know what I'm saying?
I think Gen Xers still buy a lot of albums,
right?
To tell you so that's kind of like, if you're gonna put out like a physical copy of something, that's almost kind of like your target audience now.
Yeah,
I can sell like Misery. It's like still, even these represses they're doing are selling out. But yeah, Bonefire label's sitting on a lot of that stuff it's all streaming. It seems
right
with that. So like our first CD sold okay. Didn't do an album of that, but then they kind of went the way it was kind of expensive. It's really expensive now to release an album. The artwork was expensive. The colored was expensive. So it's like, and then we had a screen printed cover, some of them. So having to sell stuff like at $25, $40, and that you don't sell a whole lot of it. I don't know what could, and now, I've been hearing, even with the Misery represses, it's taken like 6 months, and that to go through the process of going through a plant and getting the stuff back.
Sure.
4 months seems to be about the soonest, if you're lucky, that you'll ever get that stuff back. It's the cost is so much. I don't think there's as many record plants now, and if you don't press a lot of albums and you do a really small run, they're really expensive.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard that.
So yeah.
I talked to a guy a couple years back that was in a touring band that was they were paying to get on some of these bigger tours and stuff. That's like the thing nowadays, man. Is that they want to get exposure, so they'll throw a couple grand to a touring package, and they'll jump on there and they'll play a bunch of shows, and they seem to they sell a lot of merch doing this shit. If they've got all their merch game going on and they've got multiple different styles of shirts and shit like that, they make good money when they're doing it, but they're still paying that money to get on these tours. Now, what this cat was hipping me to is he's like, we haven't released a full album. They released one full album, and then they were like, we're going to do EPs here and there. And he's like, as we're touring, we're just dropping singles to kind of keep people, fresh, that they're still making music, they're still doing things, and they just kind of stockpiled as they would go on this little, like a tour date. They do like 5 or 6 dates. They'd come home, they record record a bunch of stuff that they were working on when they were on the road and shit. And that's what they would do. They would just put it up on the streaming services, and they would sell the download cards. That was their thing, and they did fairly well with it. So,
yeah, it's kind of funny you mentioned that. We've been offered shows before where they want you to sell tickets and stuff like that. We've never played one yet. It's like, oh, we're out, not doing that. We're too old for that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that too, where people are paying money to play some of even the local gigs and stuff here, and we're just like, all right, we're done. We're not even going to try to get on the gig as soon as they start talking. Well, you got to sell 100 tickets at this amount of money, and you can keep. But it's like, I sit at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like to buy it at work because the people that I work with, 19-year-olds,
sure.
They don't go to shows. They listen to streaming.
Yeah.
And that I'm not going to be able to sell these tickets. So none of us have played a single show where we've had to play to pay or pay to play. We'll put it that way. But I've heard about that.
All right. Here's a good
smaller local bar gigs. I've heard of people doing that.
Here's a good one for you. I kind of want to touch on that one before I go to this question, because this is a good question from Jeff from Simothwa. But okay. With that being said, there are some folks that have you sell tickets around town, and I've actually had one of those promoters on the podcast and talking about that very thing, because I know earlier in his booking and stuff like that, he did have people pay to play. There were some things like that. He had confessed to that. He said that with him doing the sale of tickets, it kind of made the bands prove themselves that they could do that. And I thought it was not a bad idea, whatever, if you can get them to pay. But, if you look at it from a standpoint of a band, like, okay, so this guy gets this package for X, Y, and Z. He gets it for this amount of money. If he can have these bands sell 50 tickets per band, you know what I mean? He throws 3 bands on there, $50 or 50 tickets per band. That's 150 tickets. If they're selling them for $40 a piece, you know what I'm saying? And he gets that bill that he's trying to pay, the X, Y, and Z, is already halfway covered. He's covering his ass, as opposed to whether or not these fucking people that are buying these tickets are showing up to the show or not, which is always a problem, right? You want people to show up to the show, support the bands, have a good time. You want to hear the crowd cheer. You don't want to hear, you don't want to hear the hush, you know what I'm saying? But I did get asked to do one of those, and I was asked over and over to play more shows, because I took it to that old school way that we used to do it. And what I did was I just stepped back from it, and I also let them know too, now say Todd and I have bands, and we all have, we have the same group of friends. Like, there's going to be, family members. There's going to be people outside of, like, work people and shit like that aren't in our group of friends. And I told them, now, Todd, you can remember back in the day, there was merit behind getting, a national act, to open for a national act back in the day with First Avenue and things like that. If you played those shows and had good turnouts, that was the merit that you deserved. That was the shit that people would go, hey man, we've got so-and-so coming into town. Well, do you want to open for them? We think your band would be really good. Or, we were lucky enough to have friends at First Avenue and make friends with some of the death metal crowd and shit like that, to where they would go, yeah, Necromus would be a good band for that, to open for this band. You know what I mean? There was merit behind that stuff. And I tried to explain that to this promoter, like, hey man, you're grabbing from the band gene pool, right? You're pulling all of these bands out. Now you got to think, there's probably a handful of people that aren't all of their friends. You're kind of choking the scene out, as to say, you know what I mean? Like, you're not allowing the growth of the scene. You're kind of choking it out by taking and making all these bands. And now if you say this guy has a show that has, I don't know, you name the fucking band on it, and then he puts 10 local bands on it, you know what I mean? Every one of those 10 local bands are all fighting for the friends that they have down the line to buy a fucking ticket. You know what I mean? You're choking them out. Yep. So why would you not want to give it to the people who had merit? Now, when he offered us the show, we played for Soulfly, right? And we opened up, and there was a band before us that played right before us, and then there was my buddy Rob's band, and I was blown away that these guys that played before us, because they had a great set. They played fucking fantastic. But as soon as they were done, and I know you've seen these kind of cats, but as soon as they were done, They just left and went out to get their drink on instead of pay attention to the fucking merch booth. Now, my band, before we played it, we got a run of 50 shirts. We sold 45 of those shirts before the show even started. I had to rush and get another 50 done so we'd have shirts for the show. When we got done, we ended up selling $900 worth of merch, not including selling more tickets than every band that was on the fucking bill, right? And we're old school cats, right? So I just wandered around and we're like, hey, dude, you got tickets? No, we ain't. We're going to get tickets at the door. Well, you might as well buy them from me. I got them right here. They're $5 cheaper than they are at the door. Oh, fuck yeah, I'll buy them here. Old school. I went around where everybody's hanging out and sold the fucking tickets. Why would I waste my time? And I dude, I already sold the first 50. We were on our second 50. The dude was like, here, take 100. You know what I'm saying? But this is the thing, man, is that back in the day, there was merit. There was merit. You worked your ass off to get to a certain stature, and then you got invited to play these larger shows. You know what I'm saying?
And that's was kind of misery. So we didn't really have to worry about that. But with Bonefire, it's been, a little different. With there's really hasn't been that many shows where we've been asked to sell tickets, but the few that there was, we just didn't go there.
Right. Which is understandable, man. We're old school guys, this is how it is.
Yeah. You're just used to not having to, I guess. And then, me thinking, who the hell am I going to sell them to? Because I'm in my basement, I'm playing music or whatever. Like I said, if you're not selling them at work, it's not like I'm going to hit the streets. Not out partying and big parties and that anymore so much. It's you see your friends at the show.
Yeah.
So haven't went there. I remember a few times with Misery. Remember Sean Decker?
Yep, I absolutely do.
Yeah, he used to pull that pay to play thing, but because we're friends, you kind of get on a couple of things because you're friends with him.
Yep.
Luckily I got to, right before he passed, I remember we played a show. I can't remember the name, Station 7 or something in St. Paul.
Yep, Station 4, yeah.
Whatever, I can't remember what it was, but Misery played there, and I remember being outside of the venue for a long time talking to him.
Yeah.
Usually it was more party situations where I would see him. He was drunk as shit, and he was kind of sober that day. He was having a lot of health problems, and I wasn't drinking so much that day. And I remember I got to talk to him for a long time outside of the gig, and then he died shortly thereafter. So at least I got that fond memory of him. But I think he kind of was one of the ones that started that, Deicide's going to, play in town here. How about $2,000 and you can open for me?
Yeah.
And back in those days, or a few hundred or whatever the hell it was, he was one of the first ones I remember trying to get people to pay to play.
That was his thing from Jack Koshik. Jack Koshik in Milwaukee was the guy that had a lot of that going on when he'd do the Milwaukee Metal Fest and shit like that. But Don, like you said, it was like we were friends with him for a very, very long time. I think our friendship went back 20, 25, 30 years, and I always got to sit on the sidelines and watch him do that type of shit because he'd always give us the shows. He'd be like, oh, we'll get you on the show. Don't worry about it. You're going to be direct support, that type of shit. You know what I mean? And then I'd watch him make everybody else kind of run around and do his little bidding. You know what I mean? Pass out flyers here, pass out flyers there.
I remember the last show we played with him, Club Chaos or something. I can't remember what the hell it was called. He was an Anal Blast.
Yeah.
And his thing that day that we were going to play right after his band did, this was Misery. And he brought a toilet. He'd been holding it for a long time. He brought a toilet up onto the stage and shit all over the toilet, all over the stage. And his parents were in the audience. And I don't know if you were at that show.
Yes, I was.
Refusing to go up until somebody cleaned the stage off. That was the last time we played a show with him.
Yeah.
I remember that day.
I was at that show. We played that show too.
But yeah.
So the question that I was going to get to here is from Jeff from Simothwa. He says, I always felt like a lot of Misery stuff had a fair amount of melody for that style. Did you guys ever argue about the levels of dirty punk to melody? And hopefully that is a question that makes sense.
If you listen to Misery albums, you can almost tell who wrote the songs. If Sid always were like the punk Sex Pistols type of songs, even with Bonefire, the couple that are really punky sounding is the one Sid wrote. John always wrote the crust punk songs, and mine were almost kind of a death metal feel to them. We always, like, whoever wrote the song, we just played what the other person wrote. We didn't really argue, or it just kind of, okay, always supportive of what anybody else wrote. We just played it. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, dude, that's actually a really, really good answer, because there's so many bands out there that are like so competitive within the band, which sometimes makes the band that much, better, because people are trying to like outdo each other. But when you're supportive of whatever style and it still stays in the realm of what you're doing, I think that would have been a fucking a great experience to be in that writing environment. I know, in my old bands, man, the guitar players were fucking tooth and nail with each other. It's got to do this, it's got to do that. You know what I mean? And fucking the bass player was sitting there going, "Can I get a spot in here?" You know what I mean? And I was always with the bass player, so I do that shit.
Also, back in those days too, like I said, there's no social media, so it's almost like friends would get together to join bands. Now it's like you putting ads out.
Yeah.
For people, I think that might kind of change things. And then when it's people that aren't friends to begin with, you're one fight from breaking up with a lot of these bands.
Yeah.
That didn't kind of start that way. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. So with the Paul Allender gig that you're working on here, does that have a name yet?
Yeah, it's the Unnamed Horrors.
Unnamed Horrors?
Not horrors like in female, but horrors.
Unnamed Horrors. Yep, I gotcha.
Yeah. And he's very into like his heyday. What did he quit in 2014? So he probably did like most of the Cradle's like first, I think they're like a dozen albums or something, like maybe first 8 or whatever. He's still kind of caught up into the old school, get the package put together, get the look put together, get the music put together before you present yourself, really.
Sure.
So you see the name here and there. You can look up the name and you'll see a couple like little snippets of like a few hooks or, lines that he's playing, but there's no like real graphics, no web page, no Facebook page and all that yet. There's just like little hints.
Teasers. Yeah.
Magazines will mention that he's putting together a new band and that. So he's very big into, but like I said, most of it's written now. Now it's everybody's kind of getting their parts in there and then trying to put the orchestration together. But so it's been, like I said, it's been together now for like a year and a half, actually.
Yeah.
I'm sure he says it's the best thing he's ever written. And I think it's actually different enough that it's going to get noticed because of the whole orchestration aspect of it. Cause I know Cradle went a little bit into it with the keyboards and, like not really an orchestra on stage, but this is like an actual like orchestra and choirs and stuff like that.
Damn.
So it's a bigger deal. So it's going to take a little bit more time to put together. And yeah, that poor composer in Poland just got flooded out. I don't know if you heard about all the floods that were going on.
No.
So his flat was underwater for quite a while.
Oh, no.
He almost had a computer crash for a while. So there's little hiccups. The drummer just broke his femur. Everything takes a little bit of, it's going to take some time to put it together, but it'll be cool when it comes out. And I can already tell you it's, don't really play it much to people, but the people that I've known that have heard it, it does sound really different because of all the orchestration.
Sweet.
But that was total. A lot of times now we're working with, never worked with this before, where you're like concentrating on beats per minute. There's 180, 220, stuff like that. So it's still some pretty quick music in that it just totally breaks off into orchestra. And then the orchestra playing in the background the whole time.
Yeah.
A lot of people said it sounds like the Omen, reminds them of that type of music, and so that'll be cool when it comes out.
Hell
but
yeah.
I think that's different enough, and that'll probably people take notice of it when that comes out.
Now, how difficult was it for you to get acclimated to playing this stuff online and actually like sending tracks back and forth? And I mean, this has got to be a whole new experience for you to where
it is. 2020, that was what was so different about it, and then trying to upgrade equipment and stuff for it too, and better sounded basses, and even had to go so far as I can't be taking this stuff back, so I've had to learn to set up my own instruments so there's no buzzing, and I drop tune and a 5-string, so it doesn't take much to get a buzz in there. And when you're playing with a lot of distortion, buzz doesn't even matter.
Right.
But now it's play it clean, and they're gonna on the other end, well, what kind of amp should we try to put it through? Well, it can't, be this grinding fuzz like I usually play with, because it's going to get, you bury the bass drum and stuff like that. And Paul is super technical.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard that guy. He doesn't make any mistakes. He's a hard act to follow.
Sure.
Top shelf guitarist.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's so many parts in these songs, and then he goes into them differently and comes out of them differently every time too. So it's a learning curve. So the way I kind of take the songs, a lot of these songs are 7 minutes long, 9 minutes long.
Damn.
And I just try to concentrate on parts.
Yeah.
So don't the whole song learn this first 3 minutes. Now let's learn this. But the good thing with now doing this at home, obviously you fuck up, you just go back over and you fix your own stuff, send it off. And that's kind of, the guy that's the composer is kind of getting his, feeling, well, I don't know if that would quite sound right here. Maybe you should, play this instead. That's too many notes and that, and going to bury the guitar this way, or the orchestration's going a different direction. So there's a lot of that kind of feedback too. So at least doing that and doing it at home, you have the time to make that versus trying to go into the studio and tackle this. Yeah. He's hoping that the second album we could go into the studio and record it as a band, which would be cool, but everybody is so far away trying to get all these tickets and that. To get everybody together to do that might be an undertaking. And I know the guy in Poland's having a lot of financial problems because of flooding, and I know his wife has an illness, and he's got something going with his hands, and everybody's older. Yeah. So what happens when you get up there, everybody's got their sore backs and stuff like that. So you're not going to be banging your heads, or you'll get whiplash,
Yeah. I ended up on the floor the other weekend, man, and I felt it for a couple days. I was like, holy shit. Like 2 days ago, man, I stuck my tongue out. I was like just looking at my teeth, and I went like that, and I got this fucking bruise on my tongue when I fucking hit the ground. I got a fucking $2,000 camera around my neck, and I get smashed at the ground. And when back in the pit days, man, I didn't give a shit about any of that. I'd fall down, get right back up, no big deal. Dude, my ass cheek, my hip, my leg, my foot, you know what I mean? The back of my head hit the ground. I was just like, damn, I'm banged up. I still hit the gym all week, though. That was good.
I remember trying to get in the pit just because I wanted to see the band. Yeah, the glasses flew off. And, of course, they're Oakleys, so they're not cheap. So you're trying to scramble. I was like, what the hell am I doing in here with the glasses and stuff? A lot of times my favorite place is bands I really want to see. I like to go to the side of the stage, and watch from up there, so you're not down in the pit area. But I'm not going to do that anymore. But that was just briefly. All of a sudden, going to be out a $500 pair of glasses.
Yeah,
you grab them right away. But I don't even want to mess around with that thing. It's going to happen.
Yeah,
in the pit now.
I hear you. So let's talk gear stuff. What were some of the first basses that you got? What were some of the first amps that you got? What are you using nowadays?
At first, when you start out in punk rock, it's whatever you could get. Like I said, when I moved to town, I actually played this stuff for a while. I can't remember. It was a PV head and a PV speakers. You could dump a beer down the back of a PV head and it would still work.
Back in the day, fuck yeah. They were tough.
Spill a few drops and shit doesn't work. I played with that kind of equipment for a long time. I started with a Kramer bass, and then I went to a BC Rich Warlock bass I played for the longest time, but I've always got this thing when I get a bass, I've got to change stuff out. So I had different pickups in that. And even the new basses that I bought, and I'm probably one of the crazy people, I buy a nice brand new Rickenbacker, and the first thing I do is I put a hip shot in it. And it's, like a hip shot bridge where like they have a very distinctive, bridge to them, and the way they're set up and the way they can dampen, and they got the screws and all that. I've always been one I like to change hit. I'm really big with EMG pickups, but I kept the original pickups in that. But like I said, when I got the P basses, I'm going for EMGs and that. I played that Gibson Blackbird for the longest time. I just put a hip shot on that. I always change out bridges. Yeah, I don't think the only bass that I've got a Gibson Thunderbird bass that Nikki Sixx owned.
Nice.
And gave to a radio station to auction off for charity in the late 90s. I've never changed anything on that, so that's original. He signed the pick guard at that time. I think I was laid off from a job and I got severance, so I was the highest bidder on it. I still have that, but that's the only bass that I have that I haven't changed in some way.
Do you play it? Do you play that one at all?
I was actually thinking about bringing it out for the Unnamed Horrors. I have to set it up in that because it's always set up for whatever. I don't know what. Maybe they played in D. I'm trying to think what Motley Crue would have down tuned, and I down tuned more than that.
Yeah.
So it's at least set it up. It was always one of those. I'm going to hang it on, like a trophy. I'm going to have it hanging on the wall in the hook, and took the pick guard off it and framed it behind glass so that once it signed it with the year and stuff. So that one gets smudged, and then after a while, it's like all your shit gets ruined because of the humidity changes. Yeah. So it's just closet because I don't want it to get ruined sitting out. But yeah, I just brought it out maybe 6 months ago and put strings on it and set it up. Sounds really good.
Nice.
Allegedly, he played it the year he was on videos playing it and used it in the studio the year that Vince Neil wasn't in the band.
Oh yeah.
Basis. So he picked the pick guard since 1994. So I always, after I got rid of I remember the neck got kind of messed up a bit on the Warlock that I played for a long time. Then I got to the part where I was always playing Thunderbirds, but I would always have a bass ready for. You have to watch it when you fly, so I didn't want to put like really expensive basses on a plane or some of these shows where you're partying hard and you're leaving your shit in the hallway by the exit door and you're not watching your stuff. Sometimes for shows like that, I would place a cheaper bass,
right,
or whatever. But I always pretty much just played Thunderbirds. I guess would be my favorite for the longest time.
Now with your Thunderbirds, did you have to adjust that top
Nope.
nut? You always liked it to lean kind of forward on you?
You get used to it. A lot of people don't like them because they're really freaking heavy. But if you just hold on, you just keep your hand on it, they don't lean.
Yeah.
We'll put it that way.
Yep.
So the way of like if you're drinking your beer or whatever, if you just rested your arm on it, it would keep it up. So you did out of habit, I guess. I got good with those, but right now I'm using the P basses if we're playing a show that it's going to get banged around in the back lot or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. The obviously the Thunderbirds now are, you can't buy that Blackbird anymore. And I saw one going online with like the headstock busted off for $1,800 because you just can't find them. Now they're making like knockoff Epiphone versions of it.
Now, did you always play way low? I remember that being one of your signature things, man. You like very, very Nikki Sixx like, you know what I mean? Like way, way low down towards your knees and shit, Yeah,
I guess the thing with playing low like that is you're using more wrist. When you're playing higher, you're using more forearm. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does.
You use more wrist, so that's kind of why I've always done that, and I've always used a pick. Sometimes it's hard to find a strap that's long,
right?
That long enough too. I found that problem, and I think that was always the reason, is because it's more wrist than trying to use your whole arm. And I always say I think my picking style is what sets me apart from other bass players, where they're more notes that I can play double time, half time, on time, staccato several times in a certain song.
Sure.
That I keep changing up the picking so that it worked a lot better to be all wrist, I guess.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
I think it does. I absolutely know what you're talking about. I just I've been trying to learn how to play bass myself, and I set my shit super low, and I'm like, how in the fuck do you guys play like this, man? Because it just seems so, You know, like it's so awkward because I've never played bass before. You know what I mean? Like I'm just
Yeah.
starting, so it's so weird to me to go from like where you can kind of control your fingers more. You know what I mean? Because I'm playing with my fingers and not. It's really weird because my buddy Rob says, "Here, man, try playing with a pick," and he hands me a pick, and I'm like I can play better with a pick than with my fingers, but I
I've,
really
al-
like the sound of the fingers too, though.
I've always played with a pick.
Sure.
You get pretty. Um, and then I've always played with the same tuning. So even with the unnamed horrors, they're playing in a D, and I'm still playing in a B. It's just like sometimes I can actually drop lower than the rest of the band. So that I've always kind of done too. I guess my secret, as I've always dropped to them. You know,
Right.
whichever it was, and if people are playing in an E, I can totally play in an E. But now I've got the B string too that I can drop way down on it,
Yeah.
and everybody's higher. But the problem with that is rattling,
Yeah.
buzzing. The strings aren't super tight.
Yeah, I
But
suppose
I've always
if it's not set up for that too, I suppose it's a lot harder to keep that.
hard to set up when you're using a rat, a Proco. Distortion will cover up a little bit of buzzing,
Yep.
Notice it so much, but so that was, I guess, another secret. We'll put it that way. But I'll still say my favorite bass is the Thunderbird.
Okay. How about for amps and heads and stuff? What are you using nowadays?
I always use hard key. I've right now I've got 2 hard key heads. Speakers usually. That's another thing about getting older is I don't like the huge speaker stacks anymore. There's nothing like being out all night drinking and you got to move your shit back. That's the worst part about being a musician.
Yep.
You're done at 2, and it's like all the equipment's got to go back, and it's like now it's most of it's at my house, and that is actually playing stuff that's smaller and lighter. Like now a lot of the gigs, if I don't need to bring my shit, I've got an Ampeg, a 250 watt with a combo with 2 10s in it, I think, because bass in one hand, amp in the other, out the door you go. Otherwise, yeah, I still got, if I want to play bigger stuff, I just do 4 10s now, not the big 15-inch.
Right.
And the 2 pieces in that and a couple of hard key heads. And I've kind of got the equipment now where I've got equipment if we're going to play a gig that I can get in and out really quick, equipment where I think I might have to backline some of it, and then equipment where I want to sound good and have my better stuff. You get kind of start having a lot of shit laying around, we'll put it that way.
So you're extra fancy if you've got multiple rigs that you can choose between. Oh, yeah. My buddy Rob Carlson is that same. This is a cat that has just an amazing one-off Jackson guitars here and this one that way, and this is set up for this, and he plays this specific head for this band. He's in like 4 bands, so he's got like multiple setups for multiple things, man, and it's admirable because damn, man, to be able to go, okay, this band has this particular sound, this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to set this thing up, and then move it to the next one. And you know what I mean, if you want to down tune on one thing or do something more standard, having those setups, I think it's fucking badass to be able to do that nowadays. You wouldn't even think about that back in the day because we were all broke as fuck.
Yeah, same shit. You wanted the biggest stuff you could play out of because it was cool to have big equipment. Then you realize you got to move the shit.
Yeah.
I remember, it was even living in this house here. I had some Ampeg speakers that had I think it had 4 10s and a 15 and a horn. The thing was 180 pounds.
Yeah.
Used to like to, it sounded great, but after a while, I'm not moving that damn thing anymore.
Yeah, it got the big handlebar on the back of it and a couple wheels. You're like, fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're talking about that.
Yeah.
You'd have to lean it on the 2 wheels and running down the street with that when you've been drinking too much.
Yeah, Capital Guitars has in the past years, when I started booking at Lee's Liquor Lounge a few years back, they were allowing us to come and get some of their gear because it had all their logos and stuff on it, and they wanted to sponsor the shows, and they were always really cool about loaning us gear. And that SVT, I think it's called, that big ass fucking Ampeg setup is one of the things that they let us take.
Yeah, the one with it had it was a 15, 18. It was kind of pointed at the floor.
Yeah, yeah.
In the cab. I played that thing for the longest time. And then we would have to take the door off the practice space to get it out of there. Then after a while, John got so sick of it, he just bought another set of speakers so we didn't have to carry my stuff around so much. Now they make stuff, it's so light, and you can buy, a little 500 watt. I swear to God, though, some of this 40-pound combos and that claim to be 300 watts, and they're not very powerful.
Right.
I don't know where they get away with, because in the past you could have a 100-watt bass head and it's loud as fuck.
Right. But it's like, doesn't it go by like distorted amps too? Like the sound, it's like, okay, it'll be 100 watts, but it's 100 watts when it's fucking completely blasted and like, you know what I mean? Like super, super distorted, like to where when you put a pedal on it, it sounds even worse. You know what I mean? Like just.
So that's the problem with, trying to get away with a lot of the smaller stuff too. I just don't think it has the power behind it that some of the old shit did.
Yeah.
So even my the heads in that now, that's not like the new state of the art stuff, because I don't think they sound that powerful, even though they're this big and they weigh 20 pounds.
Yeah.
And that.
Yeah, that much easier to move around. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's all about trying to get in and out of there with as little carrying shit as possible. And then you've always got the people in the band that'll disappear before the show's over, won't be around. So it's, you have the crap at your house. You're always the one that ends up, and then unfortunately for Sid, that I've been playing with for 30 years, he's the sober guy with the truck. So I'm with him and then we're moving stuff at the end.
Yeah.
It's cool to have lighter stuff. You got to remember when you play a lot of these gigs now, because there's not so many basement shows anymore, they can take a small amp and throw a mic on it. You just got to have enough to hear it on stage.
Yeah.
Like the combos, I got a lot of combos now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like back in the day, man, it was all about the look too. You know what I mean? When you had a whole fucking stack of shit behind you, you were like, I'm a fucking rock star. But then you're like, at the end, if you didn't have guys there willing to help you, or you got a friend there who's fucking lugging this big ass thing and dumps it on the ground, you're like, what the fuck, man? This thing cost me thousands of dollars. Sorry, dude.
Back in the misery days, we'd have to roadie the roadies. It would, because they'd get too drunk by the end. So yeah, I remember that happened a lot.
Yeah.
Partying days, but yeah. So yeah, that's it. Right now, that's it. Is Ampeg. I've got stuff for band practice. I've also got band practice in we've got a finished basement here, and it's like a small room in the back. So it's all, let's keep everything like at about 50 watts. And I'm not a drummer, but I bought a pro kit, so drummer doesn't have to be moving stuff in and out for shows. And that just buy amps that just stay put in the practice space, and then have your shit that you play when we play a show. So it's all come down to that now too.
Right.
But that's the nice thing here is that basically day comes for practice, you just bring the guitar and plug in, and the drummer doesn't even have to bring sticks. He just comes in and
lets it rip.
Setting his shit up, taking it down, and you can keep his stuff at home and take it home with him after the shows.
Yeah, that's always a plus, man. Plus, they get a little bit more extra practice involved in that too. That's always nice when drummers get the practice.
It's also nice too that a lot of people share spaces with other bands, and it's kind of expensive when they're going to these warehouses, and that's $300 a month, and then you have that month where you practice once.
Yeah,
and you got that one person in the band that doesn't pay their share. That we don't have to deal with that anymore. And we were lucky with Misery too. In the beginning, we were renting out spots. Then after a while, John bought a house.
Yeah.
So we practiced in his basement. Now with this band, it's my basement. It's just nice to be able to do that and not have to go to these warehouses and shit.
Yeah, worried about somebody sawing your doorknob off and fucking breaking through the wall. And I mean, dude, I've heard some crazy shit these days, man, where people will go just to the right of your door and saw into the wall just to open the door, and then they clean out your fucking room and they lock your shit back up and off they go. I've heard like 4 different studio spaces that shit happening where they just cut right through the drywall.
See, now me, if I was doing that right away, I'd be thinking, the cheapest amp and the cheapest bass, and probably might even go to and from the space with the bass.
Yeah.
And that. But how I would handle it now. So your shit got ripped off, you wouldn't be so worried about it because
Right.
you're not playing through your good stuff or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. What you said you got some shows coming up here soon. I have one in front of me, which is October 2nd. Is that you've got shows before that too, right?
So that would be the Terminal one.
Yep, the Terminal
Yeah.
Bar. Yep.
That was supposed to be the all right, we'll play a show at the Terminal just to, sometimes it helps, with the new lineup and trying to get people motivated again, especially after the pandemic and taking such a long break. If you have something that you have to kind of work towards, so you just don't slough off.
Yeah.
That like I said, the other show was offered. It was kind of hard to say no, and that's when we're like, shit, I wonder if we'll be ready to play that. But those are the only two shows, and then unless something really good comes up that we can't pass up. I kind of have a feeling though that once the shows are just starting to get going again, that it's going to be like a bottleneck. It's going to be bands going in. It's just going to be so much shit. Everybody's going to be so hungry to play shows. It might actually be kind of hard to get on bills. But I've also noticed that a lot of times, like with the Terminal show, and even I noticed with this other show, the person that would usually set up from Warplague, that was set up the other show, would always have like a certain bands that always would play the gigs. I think a lot of bands didn't survive the pandemic.
Yeah.
I think a lot, because there's people that I would think that would be playing these gigs that aren't. And even when I hate trying to book shows, even with the Terminal show, I was going to book, and then you're asking all these people, oh, we haven't played for a long time. I don't know what's going on. And
Sure.
There's a lot of bands that didn't make it, but and I have noticed too, a lot of bands seem to last about 2 or 3 years in town here, and then
just fizzle out. Yeah.
Something breaks them up. So
yeah. Well, I've been to a show up in the Duluth Superior area in the since the pandemic's kind of slowed down. The masks have gone away and all that other stuff. An open and outdoor show, Safety Joe Fest, and it was fantastic, man. It seemed like everybody was very hungry to be there. Everybody was happy to be there. People were really enjoying the music again. It was like a revival, man. And then shortly after that, there's a place over in the Eagle's Nest over in Robbinsdale, connected to I think it's a pizza joint. I think it's Broadway Pizza over in Robbinsdale. That place, man, is a really small spot. It's like it's got a small bar in it and everything, and it's it reminds me of like a cleaner Terminal Bar. You know what I'm saying? Just like it didn't have a stage. It's like really old school, man. Like you're playing on the floor. But I'll tell you what, man. The crowd was fantastic. There were people really getting into the music. There were people, myself and a couple other people taking photographs. It was really fun, and the atmosphere was great. The crowds were very receptive. Every time the songs were done, people were cheering and going ape shit. And then just last weekend, I went down to Sioux Falls, and that place was fucking packed. Friday night, there was wall-to-wall people. Saturday night, it wasn't as packed. Better bands, I think, bigger bands, Skeletal Remains, Unmerciful, VX. There was a band from Kunara from Kansas City. There was a band, Cannibal Abortion was there. There was another band from Colorado. Goddamn, I can't remember their name, but all of those bands were phenomenal. It was like the heaviest grindcore, slamcore, death metal shit, and the crowds were fantastic. Everybody was really well behaved for the most part. I didn't see any fighting. I didn't see shit. I seen everybody cheering and enjoying it. So it for me, it's a very positive thing to see this, music scenes in different areas really thriving right now. So I hope that the bands that did make it through this pandemic are going to experience some of that too.
Yeah, see, and I was kind of wondering if it's like there's just going to be a ton of shows all at once, and people are going to be super hungry, and then it'll kind of go back to its old ways, and then also what venues survive. So I'm kind of interested to see, how that's going to play out too, because I haven't been to a show since year and a half now, or whatever, 2019 maybe.
Yeah, That would be the end of 2019, I suppose. I mean, November of 2019 is really when they're saying October, November is when, we started seeing more cases of COVID, and then it bounced over here, and we started kind of slowing down and shutting shit down around March of last year.
So yeah, I don't know what to expect coming out of it. If it's just going to be a million shows and a million people trying to get on these shows or bands, or if it was going to, people are super hungry and go to everything, or no, because there'd be so much going on if they're picking and choosing. So I haven't really experienced yet to see what it's like. And I'm kind of weird too. I've got really weird music tastes. You would think that, death metal shows, punk shows, that I'm going to go to them all. The last shows I've been to, Rob Zombie, Marilyn Manson, Adam and the Ants, Billy Idol.
Right.
I go to weird shit. Last two shows, Steel Panther. I think I've seen them twice recently.
Yeah.
Like, look at me. It's like, that's kind of some odd shit. That's not,
That doesn't seem odd to me, knowing that you like Motley Crue. To me, that seems right on par.
Seen their reunion or their farewell show 3 times. Every time, right? So yeah, you would think that I'd be a lot of those shows, but no, it's always, bigger shows. And then I still listen to the same thing I listened to way back then. It's like, I don't even know a lot of the newer bands.
Right.
And then I'm stuck with my CD collection, listening to the same shit.
Yeah. There's a lot of good stuff out there still. I have a hard time breaking away from my old stuff too, man. I'm really fixated on that old style stuff, and there are a few standouts lately. For me, the Gojira band has been really, really kind of a standout for me. I've been really loving the Mastodon stuff, that High on Fire stuff. I really like I said, that new Gojira is fantastic. Gate Creepers is a band. Gate Creeper is a band that I've really been digging. They're kind of very old school death metal in the Entombed style vein, Bolt Thrower ish, And then Skeletal Remains, Misery Index. I mean, there's a handful of like death metal bands and bands like that I've been really digging lately. But I mean, it kind of just filters in slowly for me. There's a lot of local bands that I've been really digging too, So. There's a club in St. Paul that just opened. One of the guys from Witch Den is booking over there, the North Star Bar over on Payne Avenue.
I have to remember that, because I'm kind of like, where is there still left to play? It's like, I mean, if you're doing the punk thing, it's like Mortimer's is still there. I guess a lot of stuff's going to Part Wolf.
Yep.
But Hexagon's gone. There was a big blow when they closed Triple Rock. That was one of my favorite places to play. We're just about to get something going with 7th Street. We haven't played 7th Street. I mean, Misery used to play 7th Street all the time for, I don't even know, well over a decade.
Right.
2 decades maybe.
Yeah.
I remember everything was at 7th Street. We actually, Bonefire was about to get something set up, finally got a contact, and they just don't play that type of music anymore. Then that pandemic shit, something fell through with that too. Well, almost got in there again. We thought we were going to get our foot in there.
There was a band that just played there on the 10th of this month, actually. Blue Felix actually played there on the 10th, and they had a really good turnout. They virtually sold that place out, in the entry. So there is hope that you know what I mean? Because, dude, we didn't even know if that fucking club was going to be open. You know what I mean? Like it's a staple here. And I thought for sure. And, I mean, within the last, 5 years, they really tamed down their who they were bringing in musically too, you know what I mean? I was like, holy fuck, they haven't done any good metal shows there in a long time. I don't even think they've done any good punk rock shows there either.
Last thing I saw there was wrestling.
That was a long while ago then.
So no, I haven't seen a show at First Avenue forever. The last couple things I saw there was wrestling. It was the first wrestling.
Yeah.
I was wondering too how much the Fillmore is going to hurt First Avenue. First Avenue might have to start taking chances again.
Well, aren't they affiliated with those guys now?
I don't know.
I know that I know at the very end, like all of those clubs downtown were all kind of like promoting each other, like Fine Line, First Avenue, Fillmore. I thought there was something with First Avenue and the Fillmore, like it's just that little bit bigger of a venue. I want to say it was the Fillmore that they were involved in too. I can't remember 100%.
Turf Club is a good club to play at. Also, I'm trying to think recently of some of the better ones. So I was really wondering what's going to be left
Right.
after the pandemic, and actually now might even be a good time for people to start opening stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I don't think the Hex do so well if they try to open that. But just what else is going to come around after the stuff that closed up?
Yeah.
Because they're hungry again. But this variant thing, we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah.
It's like the last week. That's all that's back to nothing but COVID. And like you said, the breakthrough stuff. The fact that I was sick for so long, even though I've got the vaccination. Luckily, my voice has been okay today.
That's good. That means that sounds like you're on the healing path. That's a good sign, man.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But still, I haven't been out much. I really didn't start getting out until I hadn't went to a restaurant for a long time. Finally went to see a movie. I mean, it's really stayed in.
Yeah.
Interesting to see what happens. I still think there's going to be some bullshit through the fall because of the variant stuff before everything totally gets back. But there's also a lot of people I think that are just really sick of being cooped up that aren't going to pay much attention to the variant.
Yeah, which kind of sucks because that can spike numbers again too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because there's been a lot of talk lately. If we don't end up taking a step back here in a bit with the variant, we'll have to see. I got used to wearing a mask at work. That's for sure.
Yeah, I bet. I can imagine, man. I definitely had to do it. I worked through this whole thing, man, and I did catch COVID in November, and it was like 16 days of fucking nonsense. It sucked, and I had like 2 or 3 friends in ICU. I have at least three people that I know that passed away from it. So it's pretty crazy, man.
Yeah, no, the bands between Bonefire and the Unnamed Horrors, there was a lot of people didn't believe in the COVID thing. The drummer from Unnamed Horrors had a couple uncles that went down. Misery drummer had an uncle went down. Paul's dad in England, really healthy, got sick, ICU, he died.
Damn.
Old singer in Bonefire, him and his wife got really sick for a long time. Paul got COVID and had it for like 6 weeks. I know his wife was having to help him to the bathroom and stuff like that. It's like all these people around me were getting it and was like dying in that, where a lot of people didn't hear. I don't know anybody that has COVID and all that. So I was actually wearing like KN95 masks, N95 masks, and that at work because there's so many people. There's no social distancing with doing hair,
right? And
being, a bunch of students and then that age group don't take it too seriously,
right?
It's like 19. So it was rough. That's like I said, didn't do too much. A little older, worried about getting real sick. And that's just because everybody around me is having people die from it. So that makes it a lot worse. I'll just be happy now it's almost like I'm going to start wearing the mask again. I did the last time I worked, and now it's like, just because I'm just hearing about too much stuff happening again.
Yeah.
But it was nice for a month to take the mask off. I was only sick 3 weeks of it.
Yeah.
So that came like right away too.
Hell yeah. That's
gonna happen.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hey man, where can people get in touch with any of the old Misery stuff? Do you have any of that stuff online? Do you have it at any Bandcamp stuff or on any of the streaming services or anything like that?
Well, see, that's the hard part, because a lot of the Misery stuff was before the internet and all that, and it was released albums, CDs, and that. The last 2 albums we put out are on Bandcamp, so you can find those there. Otherwise, if you go to the Facebook Misery page, we put links to all the people that are re-releasing the stuff.
Okay.
So that's where you'll get the Misery stuff. And like I said, the last 2 albums are on Bandcamp. We don't have, they were re-released. Actually, I don't know. Somebody is going to re-release that last album now. I was going to say there was one album they didn't, but I think somebody was talking about that very last album we put out. What's funny about the very last album we put out, remember we had Al in the band the first year that went to Nausea?
Uh-huh.
we actually found him 25 years later, and he came in and sang some of the songs on our very last album. So
Wow.
that was different about that one. So the original singer on that one, Bonefire is on. We're still on a label that's still selling all this stuff and Bandcamp. And that's Dan Dittmer's label.
And did he have a website for all that stuff, or does Dan have a spot for that to be?
Fuck the World and You Too, just the abbreviation. So that's, you can buy that stuff there. And when the Unnamed Horrors come out, that's Black Lion Records is who's going to put all that stuff out.
Awesome.
And I'm sure that they're going to do streaming and CDs, and it's going to have to be a double album. Paul's still into that. This album is like an hour and a half long. You're not doing singles now, and that's what must present a huge package. So I'm kind of, that's going to be expensive to put out a double LP, and that, but you don't have to pay for it. You don't have to pay for it, I guess.
Yeah.
And then Bonefire will probably do something with the same label, but we haven't. I've got some ideas written, but we just got started. It's like, all right, we're going to get together and write. Oh shit, we got these 2 shows.
Right.
So now worry about these 2 shows now before we get back to writing stuff.
Now,
like
what?
I said, more like a for fun local band, just trying to. You do it for fun. We're not trying to get out to do a bunch of touring or anything like that. That was kind of a fault of our last LP, is that singer kept having reasons we couldn't really tour to promote it.
Yeah.
So we never got to tour to promote it. And then when we were going to finally kind of set something up, he wouldn't be in the band, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So the album kind of got put out with very little fanfare and promotion, and I thought it was a really good album. And we did that at Signature Tone.
That's a good spot.
It sounds pretty good.
Hell yeah. You have dates. You have dates for those shows coming up. What are the dates for those? Do you remember?
They said you had one in front of you.
Yep, October 2nd, Saturday, October 2nd at the Terminal Bar with Pillars from Ohio, Vacant, Bonefire, and Infuriate.
Yep. And I guess I should have looked this up too. The other show at Part Wolf is the first Friday and Saturday of September, and we're playing on Friday. I just can't remember the dates.
Okay.
5-6 weeks away.
And that's for Bob Murder?
Yeah. And what I think will be cool about that show is it's going to bring a lot of the Gen X in, even from out of town. I think it's going to be like a lot of old school people at those shows. So see people they haven't seen for a long time. I just have that feeling for some reason with that, because Bob was around he was like a fixture for a long time. He's a little older.
Yep.
And part of the old Gen X party scene type of thing, might bring a lot of people moved out of town and stuff like that. Probably bring a lot of people in.
Yeah.
I played at that venue one other time. It was called something else. I can't remember what the name of that venue was in the past.
Yeah,
but it's
I'm not sure.
2 blocks from where Triple Rock was.
Yep. South Minneapolis, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like Triple Rock area.
Okay. Is that Minnehaha? Is that off of Minnehaha there?
I don't know addresses.
I don't know nothing.
Palmer's, Triple Rock, something like that. The band with Paul, we were supposed to try to get something out by the end of the year, but there keeps being hiccups with stuff. So it'll just be ready when it's ready. Not in a hurry. Wants to put out the best product. So
yeah, well, it sounds like it's going to be pretty fucking cool, man. It sounds like you've got a lot of different parts and pieces and stuff all over the place to get it to sound the way it is. So that's a good thing, man. Hey, I appreciate you taking the time to do this, man. I know it's a Friday evening, and we're both older cats, and we've got had a nice conversation about some of this old school stuff, dude. And it's good to see you healthy. It's good to see you being productive as a musician, man, and continuing to bring the old school, man. And I appreciate that very much.
It's been like 30 years in this scene. And tomorrow I work at 7 a.m. So I'm in bed at 9:30. So
yeah, I hear you there, dude.
7-hour shift. So
oh yeah. Well, thank you very much, Todd. I appreciate your time, man. And when you get some flyers for anything you got coming up, or you guys releasing anything, man, let me know. I'll share it around like I have been with this October 2nd gig and whatnot. And if you find a flyer for that Bob Murder thing, I'd like to share that too if I could.
Okay. I know it's on the page. I'll send it to you.
Okay,
There's
cool.
a flyer. A really cool picture of somebody did an artwork of Bob. It looks really cool. But I'll send that to you before I go to bed here, which will probably be shortly. I don't even know what time it is.
It's yep, past your bedtime, dude. You're gonna turn into a pumpkin, dude.
Yeah. Cool. Hopefully, maybe I'll see you at one of these shows too.
Yes,
Sorry
sir.
that I remember what band you were in and shit 20 years ago, but that was, like I said, that was party years and a lot of, I don't remember. We played with a lot of bands.
Yeah, dude.
Past night, with a lot of people, and like I said, being in the scene for so long, you'll notice bands last 2 or 3 years, you never hear them again, and then the same friend is in a different band with a different name, and so yeah, that's kind of the way it goes.
Hell yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you very much, Todd. You have a good night, man. Thank you very much.
All right, you too.
Yeah.
Nice talk.
All right, folks, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you very much for checking it out. Do me a favor, check out ritualmadnesspodcast.com. You can check out all the episodes over there. We got 238 on in the books over there. This is 239 in the books there again. Do me a favor, check out Anti-Broadcasting Incorporated Custom Screen Printing. If you're looking to get some screen printing done, I don't know, you got a family function, you want your names put on the front of it, get in touch with them. antibroadcasting@gmail.com or 612-836-9488. If you're looking to get some tattoo work, you know where I go. Lowbrow Saints Tattoo Collective, 612-353-4755. That's Lowbrow Saints at Gmail. Give them a call. Say what's up. Tell them we sent you. They'll charge you a little bit extra. Thanks again for tuning in. Till next Friday. I'm not positive, but I think I've got the Cymothra guys coming in pre-CD release, and I'm sure they're going to be dropping a little bit of something on you over here. So tune in. We'll see you next Friday, 7:30. Show up, and we'll see you soon. Peace out.
Ritual Madness Podcast. Ritual Madness Podcast. Ritual Madness Podcast. Ritual Madness Podcast.